Start. Feet together, toes together. Let's think about. So we'll do a quick warm up. So we can talk a bit about the second section of the 13 postures. So knees bent, hips tucked. Find your vertical. And bend forward. Straighten the legs. Roll down. Good. Hands up, kidneys, lean back. And back to center. Knees bent, hips tucked. And again. Back up. Kidneys, lean back. And back to center. And again. And back to center. Swinging side to side. Back to center. And the kidneys and back. Back to center. Hips tucked, knees bent. Carry the tiger. Reaching up. Arms down. Let's do it one more time. And hold. Basic posture. Breath is in the belly, hips are tucked, knees are bent. And drop. And play the people. Shift. Turn. Forehead to the swoop up. Back to center. Shift. Turn. Forehead to the knee. And sweep up. One more. Back to center. Now horse stance. Squat. And push the knees apart, stretching the inner thighs. And squat. Shift. And shift, toes up. And shift, toes up. And back to center. Walk the feet in. All right, so last time we took a look at the first section of 13 postures, which is kind of the principles behind it. Now let's take a look at the second section, and then we'll do the full 13 postures. So second section, all right, is drag down, followed by brush knee, then play the people. So, first thing, again, right foot is forward, right foot is forward, right foot is forward. So we still haven't taken a single full step within all of this. We haven't changed essentially the orientation of the hip in relationship to the front. Like before, we see a turn to the front, bring the feet in, but we haven't actually crossed from one foot to the next, which really changes completely the orientation. So what we saw in the first section, we have this kind of half step, right? Half step. That's what we have in the first section. The second section, we have a slightly bigger step, a much bigger step, and then a side step. So 3 other types of stepping that you can do with the same leg forward without ever actually switching legs. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, to kind of put a pin in as to how the feet from our position, right? So remember, the orientation is always front foot points towards the front. You look in the direction of your intent. Rear foot is to the 45 of that. So within this position, the options that we have are that half step that we saw in the first section, right? So half step In the second section, we see we have this deeper step in, right? And this is simply, I sit deeper onto the supporting leg so that instead of being up here and placing my foot forward, I sit deeper onto that leg. So now I can step in and extend, right? And this is an opening of the legs. Knees are opening, hips are opening, feet are pointing in opposite direction almost. So this is the stance that we would use for strong pushes, right? Still pushing on the rear leg, bracing myself from the front, pushing with opposite hand because we're keeping that diagonal. So pushing up the rear leg, crossing the diagonal of the body, pushing with the front hand. And then the third step, or the next step in the second section, right, is this deep, much deeper reaching forward that then leads into that turn as switch of the hip. And that's the step that we would use for essentially for takedowns, right? It's leaping forward into the opponent's space. It's nice and low. It's an attack of the legs. So this is the stepping that we would follow, stepping in, nice and big, still pushing off that rear leg. And then the minute we're in, turning the hip for that push with the opposite hand, right? So here we're looking at different levels, right? Sitting down and then really sitting low for that takedown. And finally, we have the step from play the pipa. Right? And this comes from that turn of the hips, stepping to the side, turn to the side, and then step back towards the front, towards our line of intent. So that's a side step, right? Side step. It can be done in any direction. It's fast. We're not stepping far. The foot stays close to the other foot, right? But it turns the whole body to the side. Turns the whole body to the side, right? So that's what the side step, step front. So in terms of, not the specific application, but in terms of the general qualities then that you have, is then this idea of being low and heavy. This idea, so if that's first off with drag down, low and heavy, right? Sitting, being seated, having a slightly wider stance than normal. This is our heavy stance, right? So this would be almost like a horse stance, but it's aimed at towards the front. So the foot is brought in. But this is our solid, square, pushing stance. The longer stance that we have here, right, in terms of quality, in terms of kind of principle behind it, is this idea of long displacement. So it's almost, if you want to think as before we were having the curves, right, you're rising up, sitting down, rising up, sitting down, rising up, stepping forward and moving. There's just these curves of rising and sitting that is then propelling the upper body, that's generating power for the upper body. So we're taking those curves, or that sine wave really, and exploring what are the variations, what are the shifts in amplitude in that sine wave. You know, what happens when we go deeper into the crest, deeper into the steps, right? So that's what you want to focus on. It's not about where are my hands. It's this feeling of going low and down. We're now going into the deeper part of the sit and what comes out of that, right? So that's the sense that you want to have in all of this. Right? This is a pluck, yank, or drag down, right? So that sense of energy is being brought down, straight down into the earth. In opposition to that, in this long step that we find in brush knee, remember that before we do brush knee, there's this back motion, look front, step forward, and sweep. And so, whereas for drag down, we're going down and then out. It's heavy and short. Here we're going far. So now the amplitude is not how deep are we going into the troughs of our sine wave, but how far apart can we make it? What happens when we make our movements big? Right? And in order for me to step far forward and not fall on my foot, right? I need to first go low, slide my foot, so I still have connection with the rear leg for that push forward. So in order for me to go far forward, I need to also go low. But it's not the same kind of low as we see in drag down. It's not this planted kind of heaviness that we see in drag down. Instead, it's an expansion, right? It's taking space. It's expanding space. And then filling it. Because notice how big actually drag down single whip, how big brush knee is, right? From here, we're going all the way back, looking back, and then look forward, then all the way forward until the push. So there's enormous distance between the far reach back and the far reach forward. Notice it's the same hand that's reaching both extremes. Because if I'm here, in this case, my left hand looks back, left hand pushes forward. So it's a full extension. So now we're looking, instead of going down, like I said before, now we're going out. That's the real feel that you want to have when doing brush knee in 13 postures. Right? The exact application can be developed later. In terms of when you're doing 13 postures, what you want to have is that sense of expansion. Here, you're sending energy. Notice you're rising up. So right after going that heaviness that we saw in drag down, we rise up. And now we're sending energy back. And that's why the head turns and looks back. Right? Something comes towards us, a push, and we deflect, and we send it all the way back. We send it far away. So against that sense of extension, and now there's distance, and the distance is over there. And it's along the horizontal plane. And then we look forward. So now our intent, instead of being back, is forward. And then we sweep, and then we push. Notice this hand, this left hand, is essentially following a straight line. From here to here, it's a straight line. So this long stretch. Drag down, vertical. Right, and then the push. Brush knee, horizontal. Right? So again, we're constructing, we're exploring geometries in space and how the body has to move in order to fulfill those geometries, in order to express those geometries. And qualities, heavy and short, long, right? And horizontal, horizontals and verticals, short and long. It's kind of an episode of Sesame Street, except we're punching and kicking people. But those are the qualities, right, that we're seeing here. And then play the pipa, spirals. Right? Just play the pipa, and turn, step. And notice the hips are creating and expressing that spiral. We're here by stepping, I turn, sit down, step back towards the front. So I'm circling around the horizontal, stepping back, circle, and back to front, right? Spiral, circle. Well, spiral actually is more precise in the sense that a circle comes back to its point of origin, whereas here we're creating an exit, right? We're launching along the horizontal plane. We're taking something and then launching it back. So it's an open circle. It's kind of more like a spiral. And so starting with the hips, boom, boom, and then the shoulders and the arms express that energy sitting down and push it back. So the arms are expressing the energy of the hips and of the steps, which is exactly what happens in brush knee, turn, step, drag down, sit, push. The legs and hips are generating the quality of the energy. The arms are an expression of that energy. They refine the quality of that energy, right? So here in the second section, we have 3 geometries, right? Sinking along the vertical, expanding along the horizontal with our big steps, big energy, and then spiraling with a play the pipa, right? So again, an exploration of geometries and feeling of or qualities of energies that are being expressed. So again, you can do the 13 postures without worrying too much about what's the application. What exactly are my hands doing? You can kind of drop some of that and focus more on what are the qualities that are being generated through the legs and the hips, then sent up the spine, expressed by the arms. Right? So what are the qualities? What are the again, I keep saying the geometries because on some level, it literally comes down to that. Like, along which plane are you functioning? How are you moving through space? Along what vector and what vectors of force are you generating? So there's a very much a geometry to everything that we're doing. And that's the geometry that you want to start kind of inhabiting within the body, right? Because then it becomes the body moving through space, creating shapes through space. But it's not shapes with the arms, it's shapes created by the orientation of essentially the vertical line going through the body, the central pillars, the 3 dantians moving through space. Right? Those are the geometries that you're creating. They're the same geometries that you find in planetary motion. That's the cool part, right? So when you start moving, bigger motion takes more time. Short is fast. Traveling along the lines of gravity, all those kind of things. So it's exploring those kind of our relationship to the world around us and how we relate to it and how it relates to us and how we move with it. So that's the second section of the 13 postures. And we'll see in the third section, there's a shift because now we're going to actually step. That's the third section. So for now, let's do the 13 postures. And so keep in mind these ideas of dropping down, expanding, rotating, and how stepping through space with these qualities generates movement in the body, generates movements in the arms, and how the head, the eyes control the direction, essentially map out the geometries that we're exploring. Okay, so let's do the 13 postures. So feet together, toes together. And ho. 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 And all right, so let's close off with Celestial Tiger. Feet shoulder width apart, knees bent, hips tucked, spine nice and vertical. So we'll repeat this 3 times. So there's the arms. Ho. Palms down. Ho. Up. Ho. Fingers pointing up. Ho. Palms out. Ho. Pointing up. Ho. Arms down. Chest open to the heavens. Ho. Reach for the kidneys. Ho. Squat. Ho. Ho. Again. Ho. 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 And fold the hands over the belly. And bring the feet together. Toes together. And take a bow. All right. The class continues at hiddentaichi.com. See you there.